behalf of the United Reading Runs of Great Britain, we'd like to welcome Jane Dickinson Scott. And her talk is going to last for, I don't know,
about half an hour.
Half an hour or so. And just feel free to walk in and out if you would like to. But welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm very grateful to be here, and just to explain that I'm a Christian Science practitioner and teacher, and a practitioner is somebody who helps people through prayer to deal with their problems. My background was in social work, and I worked for a time with Tibetan refugees in northern India for Save the Children Fund, and alongside my practice, or healing practice of Christian Science, I've worked with 2 big London prisons as a minister of religion for them. I'm a mum and a grandma, and I live in Scarborough, and I didn't need a passport to get here. I just love the thought that we're all focusing on the Paralympics after such a successful Olympic period. It's great to think and to see so many of the people arriving from all over the world. And I understand for the first time that all the participating countries have allowed women to take part. For example, the Saudi Arabian women were included. A notable recognition of equality for their nation. Interestingly, in 1968 Olympics, which was held in Australia, 2 black American athletes, a gold and a bronze medal winner, stood up and gave a protest salute from the podium, standing up for black power and equality. It was seen partly as a political protest at the time, but for these men, they were raising awareness and acknowledgement of not only their black identity, but also it was key to them to stand up for equality and to claim those basic rights of dignity for their race. This incident was extremely important, actually, in the context of history. And although not acknowledged at the time, looking back, we can see that those men have been honoured as unsung heroes. Another hero that we applaud today is Dr. Ludwig Guttmann, the founder of the Paralympics. He clearly recognised that sport was an important place in individual well-being, both physical and mental. He refused to limit or label his patients due to disability. He valued who they were, their identity, their sense of purpose, and the quality of life. And this view changed the course of history. So we owe him a lot. The idea of perseverance and being true to yourself is vital and key to identity. To be true to ourselves, of course, also enables us to be true to others. Knowing who we are is essential to being who we are. Our real identity, of course, goes so much deeper than the colour of our skin, our racial identity, our nationality, or our physical abilities or disabilities. It goes deeper than the sport we play or the country that we support. Who we are is a question that has been of interest to mankind throughout the ages. Probably each of us has asked ourselves at some time or other, who am I? What is my purpose? Why am I here? Should I be here? What defines us? Let's think about that for a moment. How does the world claim to define us? Are we defined by our colour, our gender, our family history or background? Perhaps by our profile on Facebook, our words of wisdom on Twitter, our videos on YouTube? Do you identify yourself with such thoughts as, I'm practical, not academic. I'm no good at maths. He's an athlete, I'm not. Or are we defined by our material trappings, the car we drive, the house we live in? or by nationality or the part of town we come from? Are we defined by the music we listen to or the celebrities we follow? Or is it by looks, age, or a certain label of disability? The disabled boy, the blind girl, the tall fit bloke, the leggy blonde girl. Or perhaps we identify ourselves by our occupation. Our passports or ID cards identify us. We may have our fingerprints taken or our eyes scanned to say who we are. However, there's much more to the real identity of each of us, to our spiritual ID. The importance of this concept may be new to some of you here. The in-depth core of each one of you is the spiritual, loved child of God. This is the unique essence of your being, made manifest in the special qualities that you show in your own individual way. In Psalms in the Bible, there's a verse that speaks of the wonder of each of us. It says, this is the King James Version of the Bible, "The king's daughter is all glorious within." Just think about that for a moment. Each of you is the son or daughter of a king, God, which means that you inherit the very best and include all good. The discoverer of Christian Science, Mary Baker Eddy, who wrote this book, Science and Health with Key to the Scriptures, has a lot to tell us about who we are. She writes, man, meaning the generic term man, men and women, is the compound idea of infinite spirit, the spiritual image and likeness of God. Understanding that we are the spiritual likeness of God, children of God, is key to understanding our purpose and identity. To gain an idea of this knowledge, we have to start with God. A false view of our Creator can get in the way of understanding our relationship to Him and seeing the practical ways in which this relationship helps us in daily lives. Christian Science doesn't think of God as some sort of magnified mortal, a bearded guy in the sky, but rather as infinite spirit, the divine, supreme creator. And at the back of Science and Health, Mary Baker Eddy has some definitions and a glossary, including key definitions of interesting and good concepts. And I find her definition of God very helpful. It starts with this: God, the great I am. Just think of that for a moment. Think about the implication of that statement. The greatness, the nowness, the allness, the presence of that one and only. God is the great I am. What a wonderful starting point for considering, who am I? Our understanding of our relationship to God and its active effect in our lives enables us to see not only who we are, but what our purpose is. We're all on this spiritual journey of discovery. Regularly remembering who we are from this spiritual perspective is an important part of daily prayer, and there's no better way to start the day. Each of you is a one-off son or daughter of God. There's no one like you, and no one can take your place. You are important for who you are. No one is worthless, unneeded, purposeless, past it, or surplus to requirements. Each of us has a unique and individual purpose. Each of you has a unique and individual purpose. Let me tell you a little story. A first day at school is sometimes a little bit of a daunting one for a young child. So when my 3-year-old started nursery school, after her first day, I hurried to pick her up to find out how her day had gone. She met me with a big smile And as we walked along, she bounced along beside me. As I held her hand, she told me about her day. And at some point in that, I asked her, "And what are the names of your new friends?" And she replied, "Chloe sits next to me." I rather foolishly replied, "I love the name Chloe. You were nearly a Chloe." Well, my 3-year-old knew better than that. She stamped her 2 little feet together and said, "How can I be Chloe? I'm Esther." She knew who she was, and of course she couldn't imagine being anybody else. And none of us can be anybody else, which is a good thing, because you're needed for who you are. It's vital to listen to God telling us about who we are. Now, I have a few little cards here that we might just show you for a moment, because I'm going to refer to them. I think Kate's got them to hand round. In the Bible, there's an interesting verse that talks about this. It's on this topic. And I'm going to read it from the Bible. It's the second reference from the front of those little cards that I'm giving you. "To him that overcometh will I give to eat of the hidden manna, and will give him a white stone, and in the stone a new name written, which no man knoweth, saving he that receiveth it." So what is all that about? Is it some sort of Da Vinci code that we've got to crack? You know, the sort of thing? Follow the code, follow the clues, collect the rations, discover a secret stone and decipher the name inside? No, it's a message of promise. It's a promise to us. Perhaps that white stone symbolizes that each of us has a pure spiritual identity, and the name written within it can be seen as our unique name and nature as God's son or daughter. This name is special to you, a special secret truth of who you are, and you are a one and only. And you know, you can't clone a child of God. Each one is too important. By the same token, this spiritual identity can never be lost, reversed, damaged, stolen, or forgotten. And the hidden manna this message talks about represents the spiritual food or inspiration, the truth that nourishes your true identity. God is always feeding you with the knowledge of who you are. Listen to what God is saying to you about your unstoppable, unswappable identity. God, divine love, is telling you that right now you are loved, lovable, and loving. As a son or daughter of God, an idea of divine mind, you're intelligent, focused, and include all right ideas such as peace, stability, poise, creativity, order, activity. You just heard me mention that God is love and mind, each with a capital letter, to illustrate that this is a name for God. These are 2 of 7 helpful synonyms for God. In addition to love and mind, God is truth, life, soul, spirit, and principle. Each of these names illustrates the nature of God and also applies to each of us as God's children, his expression. Irving Tomlinson, in his biography, and there are many biographies of Mary Baker Eddy, you have a number of them up here actually to look at perhaps afterwards, tells us that Mary from an early age was keen to help others and to stick up for them. This little story that I'm going to tell you illustrates her core qualities of goodness and courage. She was born, by the way, in 1821, the youngest of 6 children, and she attended the local school. In the days that she went to school, all ages of children were taught in the same classroom. This enabled the older ones to help the younger ones, but sometimes it also gave an opportunity for bullying. And as we know, bullying can occur in different ways at different places, in school, college, workplace. and in families too. Mary Baker Eddy's class had an older girl in it who picked on the younger ones, teasing them to the point of fear. She bullied them and caused them to be absolutely terrified of her. On one occasion, this girl brought in a hollowed out cucumber which she had picked up and filled with muddy water from the side of the road, and she demanded that the younger children should drink from it, and they were frightened. Tomlinson quotes Mrs. Eddy, recalling that incident in later years. Mrs. Eddy is quoted as saying, "I can see her now as she started down the aisle towards the terrified scholars. I could not have been more than 8 years old, but I planted myself in the aisle down which she was coming and exclaimed, 'You shall not touch one of them. I will not permit it.'" Pretty courageous for an 8-year-old. But the girl tossed her head and cried, "Out of my way, or I will knock you over." I folded my arms and stood my ground with the words, "No, you will not lay a finger on me, nor harm one of them." She paused, looked at me, laid the cucumber down and remarked, "You're a brave little rascal." Throwing her arms around me, she kissed me. It must have been a bit of a surprise for Mary. Thereafter, whenever she went to impose upon the children, I went to the rescue and prevented her from doing harm until she gave up all attempts to annoy or injure the weaker ones. Of course, bullying doesn't always happen just amongst children, as in that experience. It can happen in all manner of different occasions and situations. A student might feel bullied by a teacher or a coach. Extreme pressure from a parent or boss at work can be intimidating. Whatever the form of bullying, no one is alone in dealing with it, and it can be resolved. We can pray about it. How? We can acknowledge and begin to understand that we are each the unique and important idea of God, son or daughter. And God, who is our divine parent, is loving and protecting us every moment. This quiet acknowledgement of our relationship to God is prayer. And prayer brings healing. No one is trapped. There is always a solution. Divine principle, love, will show us the way out of that frightening and uncomfortable bullying situation. The qualities that Mary Baker Eddy showed in that instance, she stood up for throughout her life. They were core to her identity, and she continued throughout her life to stand up for the rights of man. She demonstrated through her life the healing power of God, and she brought physical healing to many. Christian Science, which is based on the Bible, and in particular Christ Jesus' works and words, and is fully explained in this book that I've mentioned, Science and Health, with Key to the Scriptures, includes a full understanding of Christian Science. And these healings have gone on today. At the back of Science and Health, the last chapter is known as Fruitage, and includes testimonies of people who have been healed, all manner of healings, from reading and studying this book. And that healing continues. There are authenticated reports of healing in all the sentinels and journals here that are around the walls here, and also online. timeforthinkers.com, christianscience.com, you will find podcasts and reports of healings. All these healings have their foundation in the truths revealed in the Bible and Science and Health, showing how Jesus healed and how this is applicable to us today. Let's think about Jesus' sense of purpose for a moment. Jesus knew that he was the Son of God. He understood that his relationship to God was spiritual. He had a clear sense of his identity and purpose from an early age. You may know this story, but I'll remind you of it. Jesus and his parents, and Jesus was about 12 at the time, many other members of their community and family travelled from Nazareth to Jerusalem to celebrate the feast of the Passover. I imagine it was a great trip, great fun for all the family, a holiday feeling maybe, kids playing games, parents sharing food and music and interesting discussions. And when it was all over, they left, starting their several days' journey home again, on foot or by mule, travelling and continuing that wonderful sense of spirit of fun and fellowship. After a few days' walk, Jesus' parents realised that they hadn't seen their son for a while. They assumed that he was with one of the families that they were travelling with. After all, they all knew each other really well. But they looked for him amongst the group, and they couldn't find him anywhere. Of course, this was a very scary moment for them. Where was he? Had something happened to him? They turned back to Jerusalem, hurrying along the road to see whether he was on the road or where he could be found. And into the centre of the bustling town. 3 days after they'd last seen him, they found him, sitting in the temple in the heart of the city. Quite unaware of their concern, he was asking questions and discussing ideas with the elders, who were impressed with his knowledge and his interest. I can imagine that it was a real relief for those parents. Perhaps I can imagine that Joseph's relief might have been tinged with anger for the worry that Jesus had unknowingly put them through. Mary ached to understand what was going on, and this is recorded in the Bible. It's all in Luke. And she asks him, "Son," she says, "why hast thou thus dealt with us? Behold, thy father and I have sought thee sorrowing." Jesus, of course, knew that he was quite safe. He had been so busy enjoying his discussions and learning sessions that he'd completely forgotten about the family's plans to return home. To him, it was absolutely natural to be doing just what he was doing, and he was surprised that they were worried about him. His reply to his mother shows us where his thought was. He says, "How is it that ye sought me? Wist ye not that I must be about my Father's business?" Jesus was, of course, referring to his divine parent and to his role of service to him. This certainly gave his mother something to think about. This young 12-year-old accompanied his parents back home, and it's recorded that he was subject unto them. So I guess they laid down a few ground rules, maybe asking him to tell them where he was going and who he was with and what time he was coming back. The experience, too, probably reminded Jesus that he needed to understand his parents' concern, even if he didn't agree with them. The story concludes with reporting, "And Jesus increased in wisdom and stature, and in favour with God and man." From his early age and throughout his ministry, Jesus was about his Father's business. It's wonderful to know that each of us is about our Father's business. Jesus had a unique mission to show the true nature of our identity as the spiritual reflection of God. He showed clearly that the Christ, or divine essence of each of us, as the reflection of God, divine love. And he showed how understanding this true nature can be a practical help in our daily lives. Mary Baker Eddy writes, "The divinity of the Christ was made manifest in the humanity of Jesus." I love the fact that the divinity of the Christ was shown in the everyday life of Jesus. This is true of each of you. As you understand your identity as God's child, the divinity or godliness of each of you is shown in every aspect of your daily lives, shown in your own way, in your own experience. At the beginning of Jesus' ministry, after being baptized by John the Baptist, God spoke to him in these words, "This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased." And that's from Matthew. God is saying to each of you, "This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased. This is my beloved daughter, in whom I am well pleased." Never forget this important fact, that you are and will always be immeasurably loved and appreciated, valued and needed for who you are. A friend of mine told me that in her early childhood years had been dominated by a father who was violent to her mother and spent much time in a drunken stupor. He was repeatedly unfaithful and often out of work. She remembers how she and her sister tried to support their mother through these dark and difficult days. Eventually their father left home. There was a certain sense of peace brought about by his absence, but the family were in financial straits. My friend said she longed for a sense of wholeness, peace and security. At about this time, her mother started attending the Christian Science Church, and the two little girls were enrolled in the Sunday school. My friend learnt for the first time that God is the divine Father and Mother of each of us, and that we are each the beloved child of this all-loving parent who could never disappoint us or desert us. This divine parent is always present to love and to value, support and guide us. New horizons beckoned for my friend and her family, and the financial needs were met in wonderful ways. New opportunities opened up and life became much happier. My friend's concept of herself changed. Gradually, the limiting, fearful, damaged view of herself gave way, and her true identity became increasingly clear. As each of us learns about our identity as that son or daughter of God, we can see the quality of this relationship in everything that we do. There's nothing to stop us identifying ourselves spiritually and feeling the benefit from doing so. Nothing to stop us from step by step understanding more of how God made us and how He helps us. Sometimes lack of confidence claims to get in the way, or maybe doubt that we don't have what it takes, or perhaps the hurdles that we're facing seem very daunting. My youngest son used to do a lot of running, cross-country races and 1500 events. And often on a cold winter's weekend day, I could be found standing beside the track, cheering on him and his team members. On one occasion, I was standing with the team coach at the bottom of a bend, at the bottom of a final steep hill which led up to the finish line. We watched the first runners come round the bend, and I counted 6 or 7 runners before my son appeared. As he passed us, I was struck by what his coach called out to him. He just said, "Take them one by one," he instructed him. And my son just did that. One by one, he passed each of the runners as he climbed up the hill until he came to the top to win by a good margin. From that day on, our family has used that phrase, "take them one by one," every time we've had hurdles to climb, mental or physical, obstacles to surmount. What kind of situations sometimes make us question or doubt our purpose or our abilities? Perhaps transitions starting from school, going into a job or a change of job, or giving a presentation in public for the first time. Perhaps if you're made under pressure of some sort, or comparing yourself to others. New job, or recently retired, or adjusting to some new situation. Breakdown of a relationship, depression, loss of a family member, being a new parent. There are lots of different times in our human experience, aren't there, when we rethink our purpose and our identity. Understanding our status from a spiritual viewpoint gives a strong basis from which to work out life's problems and to make life's decisions. Let's look at some of them in a little bit more detail. We haven't got a lot of time here today, so it's just a brief look. That transition time from school to university or training course to work can be a time that challenges us. What do I want to do? Can I get the grades that I need that will open up the next step? What if I don't like what I'm planning? Understanding that each one of us is needed and guided by the divine planner, God, can help us to trust that although the paths are not all visible at the moment, they are there. We can trust that they will open up as we need them to and become visible one step at a time. You will have what you need to open up the new way, unfolding your job of glorifying God in your special way. What about if things are not going too well for you? Maybe you don't feel you're up to doing what you are asked to do, or you think others expect you to do, or you feel under pressure of some sort. These kind of situations can make us doubtful about our purpose and our worth. You may even be wondering if there is a place for you at all. These negative down-pulling thoughts sometimes suggest strongly that suicide is the answer. But I can assure you that you are needed and loved, and that there is a solution. The downward thoughts and suggestions that try to depress us and undermine our self-esteem and maybe make us want to give up, these thoughts can be overcome. Why? Because in fact they are not our thoughts, they are impositions. Remember, Divine Mind God is saying to each of us, "This is my loved son, my loved daughter, in whom I am well pleased." Because you are unique to creation, Divine Love God is supporting you through difficult times. And as you grow that understanding of that your uniqueness and your relationship to God, and affirm this, these negative thoughts will go. Mrs. Eddy writes in Science and Health, "Stand porter at the door of thought." It's a bit like being a bouncer at the door of your own thoughts, only letting in thoughts which are constructive and helpful and good. So hang in there and get to know yourself. You're worth getting to know. God designed you. Understanding our relationship to God can help us to deal with grief and to adjust to new circumstances. When a lifelong partner or family member passes on, there can be a huge gap, a sense of loss. Not only of that dear companion, but loss too sometimes of future good, expectation or plans. Promises of good can seem to be snatched away. These feelings and fears can also be experienced at the time of any breakup of a long relationship. Divine Love brings help to these situations by showing us that good can never really be taken from us. Why? Because the source of all good is God, Divine Love, and we can never be separated from God. God is always with us. Happiness is not defined by or dependent on person or situation. Each individual has everything they need direct from Divine Love, who will bring new views of this into our experience. Eddy writes, "Happiness is spiritual, born of truth and love." Another time when people can feel a sense of loss of confidence or purpose can perhaps be on retirement or a change of career, perhaps after years in a particular job where the individual has felt needed and useful. As you know, careers in sports and in the military too can be fairly short, and often in other areas of life today as well. So that a new direction is required, which sometimes includes retraining. For some at this time it can be difficult. It can be a hard time. You can sometimes feel you don't have a role to play. Sometimes these changes are very dramatic. I have a friend who was a professional cricketer. He was just brilliant at his job. And he was snapped up when he left college for a very important, prestigious team as soon as he left college. He loved the lifestyle. Almost celebrity status, attention, appreciation from fans, but most of all, of course, he loved playing the game and using his skills. After 10 years or so playing, he was devastated when he was not reselected and his contract came to an end. This was certainly a time for him to reassess who he was and what he was doing. He had to dig deep to remember that although he loved playing cricket professionally, it was not the whole of his identity, or did it determine his worth. And good for him didn't need to stop because there was a change of role or activity. This young man went on to glorify God in new ways as a teacher in the classroom and also as an extra joy of coaching the cricket team. I have a friend who always refers to retiring as retiring, as in putting new tyres on for the road ahead. I love that idea. If you're retiring, you're preparing the car for greater journeys, adventures, rather than accepting any sense of loss of mobility, purpose or action. And all the good of previous journeys remains like an unstoppable bank of spiritual fuel for today and tomorrow. It means that the good of our previous working life remains to bless this day, this hour, and tomorrow. We can expect that there will be new ways to experience God's love and care and to continue purposeful activity. We can never outgrow usefulness or retire from showing forth God's qualities. Eddie writes in Science and Health, each successive stage of experience unfolds new views of divine goodness and love. Whether you're faced with a big challenge or a quieter, smaller task, it can be accomplished. I'm reminded of the parable of the tares and the wheat, when the master said, and this is from Matthew, "Well done, thou good and faithful servant. Thou hast been faithful over a few things. I will make you ruler over many things. Enter thou into the joy of thy Lord." It's a practical and helpful instruction to be faithful over a few things, leading to ruling over many. A young student called me one day. She was auditioning for a part in the school play. We shared some truths about her being in her right God-appointed place and that she could rejoice in expressing her God-given talents. Later in the day, she called me again. She was very upset. She had been offered a part in the play, but it was the least important role. This young woman felt embarrassed, she felt let down, unappreciated, and dare I say angry. She told me in no uncertain terms what she thought of the play, the directors, the other actors, and she concluded it was a silly play anyway. She didn't want the part, and she certainly was going to refuse the part she'd been offered. And then she paused. After all, she had turned to God before the audition, and she was used to praying. And when she was ready to hear me, and don't we all sometimes have to quiet thought before we can listen to the truth? When she was listening, I pointed out that every part in the play was essential and went up to make up the whole. The lead ones, which clearly she had set her heart on a lead role, needed the smaller roles and vice versa. Each member of the company was essential. And at the right time, I shared with her that passage from Matthew, reminding her that she was a faithful servant, a consistent follower, always reflecting God's love's purpose for her. I suggested that she pray further before rejecting the part offered and be sure that she was turning it down for the right reasons. She promised she would do this. The next morning, a much happier voice spoke to me on the phone. She told me that she would take the part and try to make the best of it, and do her best to join in. The weeks of rehearsing came and went, with this young performer maintaining her courage and commitment to doing her best. Various backstage parts came up, and she thoroughly enjoyed helping others as well as herself. The show was a great success, with lots of appreciation and applause, including several congratulations for our young performer. Her part was seen as an excellent cameo performance. How glad she was that she had not turned down the opportunity to grow, to use her talents, not only of acting, but of humility, unselfishness, and care. And you know, the following year, my young friend was given the lead female role in an exciting and demanding play, which she performed to high acclaim. And she said to me, and of course I had to get permission to share this story from her, and I took down verbatim what she said about this. She said to me, "It's amazing. I would never have been considered for the part if I hadn't done the other one and sorted myself out a bit." Following on from that story, let's look at competition for a minute. Competition implies that there's not enough good to go around. A sort of musical chairs, a lottery, as one competes for jobs, for places, for security, companionship, supply. This suggestion, though widespread, has not a single foundation in fact. Think of mathematics for a moment. Each number is needed and useful. Each one is in fact required to make up the whole. The principle of mathematics is essential to the whole. It gives us a glimpse of the uniqueness and necessity of each of us. Each of you is essential to creation, and you're needed to complete God's expression of himself. Just as it would be impossible for one number to replace another, so it is that each of you has your right place and purpose. And from this standpoint, we can be inspired rather than envious of others or fearful about the future. The more we learn about and correctly identify ourselves as God's offspring, the more easily we can also recognize the spiritual identity of our fellow man. No one's role is more or less important than another's. No one's role is more or less important than another's. God is infinite good and loves us. Therefore, as God's beloved sons and daughters, we are provided with all we need every moment. And because mind God is infinite intelligence, and we are mind's ideas, we can never lose the ability or the opportunity to use our individual and much needed God-given talents. In spiritual terms, we're always about our Father Mother's business, reflecting our divine parents' name and nature. This is our daily being, our full-time, never to be made redundant occupation. In fact, we all work for God. And this boss is the best employer, provider we could have. You're employed full-time by him to express those wonderful qualities in your special individual way. God's abundance is actually a divine inheritance, supplying all good to us every moment. It's a free flow of good to us, divine love. Paul writes in Philippians, "God shall supply all your need according to his riches in glory by Christ Jesus." And Mary Baker Eddy explains in her prose works, God gives you his spiritual ideas, and in turn, they give you daily supplies. And she goes on, never ask for tomorrow. It is enough that divine love is an ever-present help, and if you wait, never doubting, you will have all you need every moment. Each of you has infinite possibilities ahead of you to live your lives as God's sons and daughters. You're the daughter of the great I Am, the one divine originator who loves you and guides you and directs your path. Divine Mind motivates and enables you to express, to show your individual qualities and expressions in your own special way, your needed way. Jesus, relying totally on God, said, "I can of mine own self do nothing." And we confidently echo what Paul states. And he says, "God shall supply all your need according to his riches." Oops, we've read that one before. It's a good one to have twice, of course. "I can do all things through Christ, which strengtheneth me." As he explained, "For it is God which worketh in you, both to will and to do of his good pleasure." I'd like to close with part of a passage written by Mary Baker Eddy from another of her prose works. This passage, I think, sums up and confirms our purpose. She says, "Rise above the oft-repeated inquiry, 'What am I?' to the scientific response, 'I am able to impart truth, health and happiness, and this is my rock of salvation and my reason for existing.' Enjoy being true to yourselves. God is right now nourishing your true identity. You're properly ID'd. And the book that I've been referring to today, Science and Health with Key to the Scriptures by Mary Baker Eddy, is available here and explains all the ideas that I've been sharing. And I'd love to talk to anybody who'd like to talk to me. Thank you.
Well, it's my colleague that told me about it, actually. I found the information in the Metro, and because I need some answers, and sometimes people can't give it to you, the answers.
I found the talk very interesting and uplifting, and I thought I haven't purchased one of the Christian Science books. I need to do a little bit of more reading to find out more about the organization itself.
I like the phrase when she talked about retirement. It's like retirement. I did like that phrase of it.
And when I really understood who I was, and I'm still understanding that just changed my whole life, turned it around completely. When I knew that I am God, if God's king, then I'm a princess. Oh, I like that. I'll be a princess. And that's how I feel. I do. It was a lovely lecture. Just lovely. Touched on everything.
Well, I think the whole lecture was brilliant and spoke to me in general, but in particular the last quote that she gave from Mary Baker Eddy. She gave out these cards which, what am I and our spiritual identity? And the response is, I am able to impart truth, health and happiness, and this is my rock of salvation and my reason for existing. And I found in the context of myself as a Christian Science nurse from New Zealand, but traveling all around the world, trying to find the place where I'm needed most, sometimes doubting like we do, I just found that was really valuable.
Very lighting, especially for a Saturday afternoon, you're doing your shopping and suddenly you're coming more a moment of spiritualness, just like that.